Brick's calm declaration silenced the entire hall. Every whisper, every sneer, every murmur of doubt was cut short. The weight of his words was too heavy to dismiss. "She works for me. She answers directly to me," Brick repeated, his gaze sharp and unyielding. Amy's knees almost buckled with relief. He had spoken up for her. The one man who had the power to erase every insult hurled at her had done so without hesitation. But Carlton wasn't ready to give up. He forced a smile and said, "Mr. Alessandro, perhaps you don't understand. This woman is trying to use your name to escape punishment. She is nothing but—" "Mayor Carlton," Brick interrupted coldly, his deep voice echoing across the grand hall. "Choose your next words carefully. That woman, as you call her, is not only my assistant but also the mother of my children." A stunned gasp swept through the hall. Even Amy froze where she stood, her wide eyes darting to Brick. He had revealed it, publicly, before the city's elite. Edith's face drained of color. "Impossible. How dare you?" "Silence," Brick cut in sharply. His aura was so intimidating that even Edith faltered. "You brought her here to humiliate her. You framed her with tasteless wine. Do you think I wouldn't find out?" The server who had betrayed Amy visibly shook, his face pale as sweat trickled down his neck. Brick's men, who had been strategically placed around the hall, were already moving. "Take him," Brick ordered. Two of his bodyguards stepped forward, seizing the trembling server. Carlton's mask of confidence cracked. "Mr. Alessandro, please, this is a misunderstanding." Brick stood, towering, every eye in the hall pinned on him. "No. The misunderstanding is you thinking your position as mayor gives you the right to destroy a woman's dignity. Let me make myself clear." His voice dropped, low and dangerous. "No one touches what belongs to me. No one humiliates the mother of my children. Not even the mayor of North Hill." A stunned silence followed. Amy's heart pounded violently in her chest. "Belongs to me." He had said it in front of everyone. The hall erupted in murmurs. Some shocked, some thrilled, some scandalized. Teresa's hand curled so tightly around her glass that it cracked. She forced a smile, but her nails dug into her palm. That wasn't supposed to happen. Amy was supposed to be disgraced, not exalted. Amy looked down quickly, her tears threatening to spill. She didn't know whether to feel relieved, overjoyed, or frightened. Brick had just set the city ablaze with his declaration. And now, nothing would ever be the same again. The hall was alive with murmurs, waves of whispers sweeping like ripples across a still pond. Every guest had their eyes fixed on Amy, some with envy, some with hatred, and others with awe. Brick's words carried the weight of an empire, and now Amy's identity was no longer that of a disgraced servant, it was of the woman protected by the most powerful man in the room. Amy felt the intensity of their stares burning into her skin, but Brick's presence beside her was like a shield. She kept her eyes lowered, fingers trembling as she clutched the fabric of her dress. Inside, her emotions clashed, relief, fear, confusion, and something dangerously close to hope. "Mr. Alessandro," Carlton tried again, his voice thinner this time. He was sweating now, the pressure of Brick's gaze crushing him. "Surely you understand, this was all just a test." Brick cut him off, his lips curving into a humorless smile. "A trap? Or a desperate attempt to humiliate the mother of my children?" His voice dropped to a menacing calm, each syllable precise. "Do not insult me further, Mayor Carlton. You've already crossed a line that even your office cannot protect you from." The mayor's words choked in his throat. For the first time, his power seemed small, fragile, like glass against steel. He bowed slightly, forcing an unconvincing smile. "Of course, Mr. Alessandro. I apologize for the insult. It was a misunderstanding, as you said." The guests exchanged glances, shocked to see the proud mayor reduced to groveling. Edith, pale and trembling, gripped her husband's arm, silently begging him to stop before Brick's wrath consumed them both. But Teresa stood still, her glass still in hand, her heart pounding with venom. Her carefully laid plan had shattered before her eyes, replaced with a truth far worse than her nightmares. Amy was not only safe from humiliation, she was untouchable now. Teresa's smile was sharp as a blade, masking her fury. This isn't over, she promised silently. Brick turned his gaze from the mayor back to Amy. His eyes softened, but only slightly, as if reminding her, "You are mine. I've claimed you. Nothing and no one will harm you while I stand." He extended his hand. Amy hesitated, trembling, but placed her fingers in his palm. His grip was firm, possessive, anchoring her against the storm of whispers. Together, they began to leave the hall, his aura parting the sea of guests like a force of nature. The crowd lowered their heads, unwilling to meet Brick's eyes. Respect, fear, and curiosity weighed heavy in the air. For some, this revelation was scandalous. For others, it was a warning. As they walked past Teresa, Amy could feel the heat of her rival's glare. Teresa leaned in, her whisper like venom, meant only for Amy. "Don't mistake his protection for love. Sooner or later, he'll discard you, like he does with everyone else." Amy stiffened, but she didn't respond. "Not here. Not now." She kept walking, her hand still in Brick's, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. Outside the grand hall, the night air felt heavy, cool against her flushed skin. Brick stopped, turning to face her. His expression was unreadable, carved from stone, yet his eyes studied her closely, as if searching for something. "You should never have been put through that," he said finally, his voice quieter now, almost human. "But remember this, Amy, no one humiliates you while you stand under my name." Her heart twisted painfully. She wanted to believe him, to let those words soothe the wounds carved deep into her soul. But a part of her still questioned, was this protection, or possession? Before she could speak, the sound of hurried footsteps approached. One of Brick's men leaned close and whispered in his ear. Brick's jaw tightened, his gaze darkening. "There's more to this," he muttered. Carlton wasn't acting alone. His hand released Amy's, only to rest lightly on her shoulder, steadying her. "Stay close. Tonight was only the beginning." Amy's breath caught in her throat. If tonight was only the beginning, what storm was waiting for them ahead? Brick's expression hardened as he absorbed his guard's words. The air around him thickened, charged with a silent fury. Amy stood frozen, watching the shadows flicker in his eyes. "Who?" Brick demanded in a low growl. The guard hesitated, glancing at Amy before leaning in closer. "We traced the order for the tampered wine, sir. It came from within Carlton's circle, but the name tied to the order isn't Carlton's." Brick's gaze narrowed. "Then whose is it?" The guard swallowed hard. "Teresa Holloway." Amy's chest tightened. "Teresa. Of course." The venomous whispers in the hall, the hatred burning in her rival's eyes, suddenly, everything fit. Brick's jaw flexed, but his voice remained calm, dangerously calm. "Bring me proof. Nothing less." The guard nodded sharply and withdrew, vanishing into the night. Amy tried to steady her breathing, but her pulse raced. Teresa had set her up. Again. Yet this time, it wasn't just petty cruelty, it was calculated, public, and nearly destroyed her reputation entirely. Brick turned back to her, his dark eyes heavy with intensity. "You see now? It was never about you drinking that wine. It was about breaking you in front of me. About questioning my judgment." Amy flinched. "But, why me? Why always me?" Brick's silence stretched for a long, heavy moment. The night wind carried the distant hum of traffic, muffled laughter from inside the hall, and yet between them, there was only the weight of unspoken truth. Finally, he stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, his voice low and steady. "Because you matter, Amy. They don't attack what's worthless. They attack what threatens them." Her breath caught. She wanted to believe those words, but the echo of Teresa's warning still rang in her ears. Don't mistake his protection for love. Brick reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. His touch was surprisingly gentle for a man who moments earlier had shaken an entire hall with his authority. "You've suffered enough humiliation for a lifetime. From this night forward, anyone who dares to touch you will answer to me. Do you understand?" Amy swallowed, her lips trembling. "But Brick, what about Teresa? She won't stop. Not until—" "She will," he cut her off firmly. "Because I'll end it before she tries again." His eyes darkened with a promise that made her shiver. Just then, another figure emerged from the shadows, Teresa herself. Her gown glimmered under the lantern light, her smile sharp, her confidence undimmed despite the scandal inside. "Well, isn't this cozy?" Teresa's voice dripped with mockery. She stopped a few feet away, her eyes flicking from Brick to Amy, then back. Northill's most powerful man, and his little mistress. Amy stiffened, shame and anger twisting inside her. But before she could respond, Brick stepped forward, placing himself squarely between the two women. "Choose your next words carefully, Teresa," he warned, his tone like steel. But Teresa only laughed softly. "What? Will you destroy me the way you threatened Carlton? Don't forget, Brick, this city needs me far more than it needs her." She spat the word like poison. Amy's heart pounded. She had seen Teresa cruel, cunning, and manipulative before, but tonight her defiance carried a dangerous edge, as if she wasn't afraid of Brick's power at all. Brick's eyes narrowed. "You've made one mistake tonight already. Don't make another." Teresa's smirk widened, her eyes glittering with secrets. "Oh, darling, this wasn't a mistake." She leaned closer, lowering her voice until it slithered between them like smoke. "It was just the opening move." Amy froze. A chill swept down her spine as Teresa turned on her heel, her laughter echoing into the night. Brick didn't move for a long while, his jaw clenched, his eyes fixed on the path Teresa had taken. Finally, he exhaled, muttering more to himself than to Amy. "This war has just begun." Amy's chest tightened. A war. And she was at the very heart of it. The night air clung to Amy's skin as though the world itself had absorbed Teresa's venom and pressed it against her. Brick remained motionless, his silhouette rigid, his shoulders heavy with authority and silent rage. Amy stole a glance at him, but his face was unreadable, carved from stone, yet his jaw flexed every few seconds, betraying the storm brewing inside. Amy wrapped her arms around herself, the echo of Teresa's laughter still slithering in her ears. The words, "It was just the opening move," haunted her. If Teresa was willing to risk everything tonight, what else was she capable of? Finally, Brick spoke, his voice low, deliberate. "Amy, you need to understand. Teresa isn't acting alone. She doesn't have the courage or the reach to stage something like this without powerful backing." Amy's brows furrowed. "Backing? You mean, there are more people after me?" "No," Brick corrected, his gaze cutting into the shadows as if searching for hidden enemies. "They're after me. You're just the weapon they think they can use to wound me." Amy's stomach twisted painfully. She wanted to argue, to insist she wasn't anyone's weapon, but deep down she knew he was right. Teresa hadn't targeted her just out of jealousy. Amy was a means to shake Brick's empire at its core. A silence settled between them, broken only when Brick stepped forward, taking her hand firmly. "Come with me." His grip was warm, steady, pulling her out of the spiral of fear. He guided her toward the sleek black car waiting at the curb, its tinted windows reflecting the golden glow of the hall behind them. The driver hurried to open the door, but Brick waved him off and instead opened it himself, ushering Amy inside. The interior was dimly lit, the faint scent of leather and cedar wrapping around her. She slid into the seat, her mind whirling. Moments later, Brick joined her, his tall frame filling the space with quiet dominance. The car began to move, the city lights flickering past. Amy's hands trembled in her lap, but Brick's steady presence beside her both comforted and unsettled her. "Where are we going?" she asked finally, her voice small. Brick turned his head slightly, his dark eyes glinting in the passing lights. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere Teresa won't dare follow." Amy bit her lip. "You mean, your estate?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied her for a long moment, his gaze searching, heavy, as though weighing what she could handle. Finally, he nodded. "Yes. But safety isn't just walls and guards, Amy. It's trust. And if you're to survive what's coming, you'll need to trust me completely." Her heart stumbled in her chest. Trust. She wanted to, how she wanted to, but Teresa's words gnawed at her. Don't mistake his protection for love. Amy looked away, her reflection staring back at her in the tinted glass. "Brick, why me? You could have any woman in this city. Why do you keep protecting me? The silence that followed was unbearable. She half expected him to brush her question aside, to cloak his answer in dominance and authority. But when he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she had ever heard it. Because you don't see me the way they do. To them, I'm power, wealth, control. To you, I'm just a man. That terrifies them. And it terrifies me, too. Amy turned to him, startled. The shadows softened the harsh lines of his face, revealing not a titan of industry but a man with cracks in his armor. Her lips parted, but before she could respond, his phone buzzed sharply. Brick snatched it up, his eyes narrowing as he read the message. Amy watched his expression harden, his brief vulnerability vanishing behind the mask of steel once more. What is it? She asked nervously. He lowered the phone, his voice edged with cold fury. Proof. Teresa wasn't bluffing. She's not just moving against you, she's aligned herself with someone inside my circle. Amy's breath caught. Betrayal. From within. Brick's eyes burned as he muttered, almost to himself, this war won't wait for us to be ready. It's already begun. Amy shivered, pressing her back into the leather seat. If this was war, she wasn't sure she was strong enough to endure it. But as Brick's hand suddenly covered hers firm, grounding, something inside her whispered that maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't have to fight it alone. The car's tires hummed against the smooth asphalt as they left the glittering heart of Northill behind. Neon lights bled into shadows, replaced by the quiet, looming hills where Brick Alessandro's estate rested like a fortress over the city. Amy's gaze lingered outside the window, but her mind wasn't on the passing streets. It was on Brick's words. This war won't wait for us to be ready. Each syllable felt like a stone pressing against her chest. She wasn't built for war, she was just a woman trying to survive humiliation after humiliation. And yet, here she was, sitting beside the most feared man in Northill, bound to him in ways she could no longer untangle. Brick's hand still rested over hers, steady, commanding, but also protective. She dared not pull away. She didn't know if it was because she feared insulting him, or because a part of her needed that anchor. The car slowed as iron gates loomed ahead, flanked by stone lions. With a silent command from Brick, the gates parted, revealing the Alessandro estate in all its glory. Lights traced the grand driveway, leading up to a mansion that seemed less like a home and more like a palace carved from shadow and wealth. Amy's breath caught. She had been here before, once or twice, but tonight it felt different. Tonight, the mansion wasn't just Brick's fortress, it was her prison and her shelter all at once. The car came to a stop. A servant rushed forward to open the door, bowing slightly. Brick exited first, tall and imposing against the glow of the estate lights. He extended his hand for Amy, and though her legs trembled, she placed her hand in his and stepped out. Inside, the mansion hummed with quiet efficiency. Guards in black suits lingered in corners, staff moved discreetly, and everywhere Amy looked, power was etched into the very walls. Marble floors gleamed, chandeliers sparkled, and paintings of Alessandro ancestors glared down with timeless authority. Brick led her through the grand hall, his stride purposeful. Amy struggled to keep up, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. Finally, he stopped before a set of double doors, pushing them open to reveal a private chamber. It wasn't lavish in the way she expected. Instead, it was dark, masculine, heavy drapes, shelves lined with books, and a fireplace crackling faintly. "This is my study," Brick said, his voice steady. "From here, I see everything. Every deal, every betrayal, every ally." He turned to her, his gaze cutting deep. "And from tonight, Amy, you will see it too." Her eyes widened. "Me? But why?" "Because ignorance will kill you faster than any enemy." He stepped closer, his towering frame casting her in shadow. "Teresa wants you broken. My enemies want you erased. I won't let that happen. But you must understand the stakes. Once you stand beside me, there is no turning back." Amy's heart pounded. She searched his eyes for some hint of softness, some reassurance, but all she saw was iron and fire. Yet beneath it, hidden deep, was something else. Something that made her chest ache. "I never asked for this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I never asked to be in your war." No, Brick agreed softly, almost regretfully. But fate put you in it the moment you bore my children. Her breath caught. The reminder was sharp, pulling her back into the reality she could never escape. The children. Their bond. Their shared blood. Before she could reply, the door opened and another of Brick's men entered, bowing quickly. Sir, we've confirmed it. Teresa met with someone inside the circle 2 nights ago. The meeting was in secret, but we intercepted enough to identify him. Brick's eyes narrowed. Who? The guard hesitated, glancing at Amy, then at Brick. It's Victor D'Souza. Your consigliere. The silence that followed was suffocating. Amy didn't know Victor well, but she knew enough. He was Brick's right hand, his trusted advisor, the man always at his side in negotiations. Betrayal from Victor wasn't just dangerous. It was catastrophic. Brick's expression hardened into stone. His voice was deadly calm. Bring him to me. Now. The guard nodded and left swiftly. Amy's pulse raced as she turned to Brick. Victor. But, he's been loyal to you for years. Why would he? Because loyalty is a currency, Amy. Brick's eyes were cold, merciless. And Teresa has found a way to buy his. He moved to the window, staring out at the dark hills beyond. His reflection in the glass looked almost inhuman, too strong, too unyielding. Tonight, the lines are drawn. Friends. Enemies. Traitors. I will root them out one by one. Amy shivered. This wasn't just about Teresa anymore. This was bigger, darker. And as the fire crackled in the hearth, she realized something that made her chest tighten. If Brick was going to war, then so was she. Whether she wanted to or not. The fire in Brick's study hissed and popped, sending shadows flickering across the walls as Amy stood stiffly by the edge of the rug. Her heartbeat drummed so loud in her ears she was certain Brick could hear it. He remained at the window, hands clasped behind his back, the faint glow of the city lights outlining his broad shoulders. Every second dragged until finally, the heavy knock came at the door. Enter, Brick commanded. 2 guards stepped in, hauling Victor D'Souza between them. His tailored suit was rumpled now, his tie loosened, his dark hair slick with sweat. Even in his disheveled state, his eyes carried defiance, darting first to Amy, then to Brick. Release him, Brick ordered. The guards obeyed instantly, pushing Victor forward before retreating. The doors shut with a resonant thud, sealing the 3 of them inside. Victor straightened his jacket with trembling hands, trying to reclaim his dignity. Brick, this is unnecessary. Dragging me in like a criminal. I've stood by you for years. Years of loyalty, Brick said quietly, still facing the window. And yet, in a single night, you choose betrayal. Amy flinched at the chill in his voice. Victor's jaw tightened. You're mistaken. I would never betray you. Brick finally turned, his presence filling the room like thunder. His eyes bored into Victor's. Teresa Holloway. 2 nights ago. Do you deny it? Victor hesitated, his lips parting, then pressed shut. That hesitation was enough. Amy's breath caught. Brick stepped forward slowly, each footfall deliberate, echoing across the floorboards. I gave you everything, Victor. Power. Respect. A seat at my table. And you sell me out to a viper who hides behind politics and jealousy. Victor's voice cracked under the weight of Brick's fury. You don't understand, Brick. Teresa isn't acting alone. There are forces bigger than her, bigger than you. She offered me a way out before the storm hit. A way to survive. Amy's heart dropped. Bigger than Brick. She had thought Teresa was dangerous enough, but the way Victor spoke, it was as if an unseen monster loomed just beyond the horizon. Brick stopped inches away from Victor, his face unreadable. For a long moment, silence reigned. Then, in a voice low enough to freeze the air, Brick asked, and what did you promise her in return? Victor swallowed hard. His gaze flickered toward Amy. Information, about her. About Amy. Amy's stomach lurched, nausea flooding her. She stumbled back a step, her hand flying to her mouth. Brick's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room plummeted. You would dare use her, the mother of my children, as a bargaining chip. Victor's bravado cracked, desperation spilling out. "Brick, please." I was cornered. They already knew too much. If I hadn't cooperated, they would have killed me. "You can't protect us all." Brick's hand shot out, gripping Victor by the collar and slamming him against the wall with a force that rattled the paintings. Amy gasped, her body frozen between terror and awe. "You think survival means selling your soul?" Brick growled, his voice a blade. "You should have come to me. You should have trusted me." Victor choked against Brick's grip, his eyes bulging with fear. I didn't trust anyone anymore." The words hung heavy in the air. Brick's jaw clenched, his rage and disappointment battling in his eyes. For a terrifying second, Amy thought he might crush the life out of Victor right there in the study. But then Brick released him abruptly, and Victor collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. "Get out of my sight," Brick said coldly. "But understand this, Victor, your life now belongs to me. One wrong move, one whispered word to Teresa, and I will erase you. Do you understand?" Victor coughed violently, nodding frantically. Yes, I understand. Leave." The guards reappeared instantly, dragging the shaken man away. The doors slammed shut once more, leaving only Amy and Brick in the suffocating silence. Amy's hands trembled as she whispered, "Brick, if Teresa isn't alone, then who else is behind this?" Brick exhaled heavily, running a hand over his face. For the first time that night, Amy saw something raw in him, fatigue, perhaps even uncertainty. "There are people in this city," he murmured, "who've been waiting years to watch me fall. Teresa is just their mask. Victor was just their pawn. And you," his gaze lifted to Amy, piercing. "You are their leverage." Amy's knees weakened, and she sank into the armchair by the fire. Her voice cracked. "I can't do this, Brick. I can't be the reason you're dragged into war." He crouched in front of her, his large hands gripping the arms of her chair, caging her in. His eyes burned with a mix of fury and something more vulnerable. "You don't get to choose, Amy. This is already in motion. And if you fall, I fall. That's why I will protect you even from yourself if I have to." Her throat tightened, tears pricking her eyes. She wanted to scream, to deny him, to escape this nightmare, but deep down, she knew he was right. Outside the study, Amy didn't sleep that night. In the distance, the storm as outside matched the storm in her chest. Storm about to break. Rain lashed against the windows of her room, each strike like a drumbeat to her racing thoughts. She paced across the floor, barefoot, her silk nightgown whispering against her skin. The words Victor had spoken replayed endlessly in her mind. They already knew too much. "I gave them information about Amy." Her hands shook as she pressed them against the cold glass, peering into the ink-black gardens below. Somewhere beyond the hedges, the city pulsed, alive with secrets and enemies she couldn't see. Teresa Holloway was no longer just a shadow in Brick's stories, she was real, reaching for Amy, trying to drag her into a world she hadn't chosen. Amy spun at the sound of the door creaking open. Her breath hitched. Brick filled the doorway, his frame dark and commanding. The firelight from the hall outlined him, making him seem larger than life, as though carved from stone. His shirt was undone at the collar, his sleeves rolled up, veins thick on his forearms. "You should be asleep," he said, his voice low but carrying the weight of command. Amy's throat tightened. How could I sleep, after tonight? Brick entered, shutting the door behind him. The soft click echoed like a lock on fate. He studied her, his gaze unrelenting, stripping away the mask she tried to wear. "You're afraid," he murmured. "Of course I'm afraid," Amy shot back, her voice trembling with anger she hadn't realized she carried. "You keep talking about enemies, about wars, about people who want me as leverage. And all I can think is, why me? I never asked for this. I never asked to be part of your empire, Brick." Her voice cracked on his name. Tears burned her eyes. Brick moved toward her slowly, deliberately, until he stood just inches away. She had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze, and the heat of his presence pressed down on her chest like a weight. "You think this is about what you asked for," he said softly. "Amy, the moment you walked into my world, you became part of it. The moment you carried my children, you became untouchable to me." His words struck deep, unraveling her. She wanted to scream at him, push him away, but her knees threatened to give out under the sheer gravity of his stare. "You scare me," she whispered. A muscle ticked in his jaw. "Good. Fear keeps you alive." "No," Amy shot back, her voice gaining a desperate edge. "Fear is killing me. Every breath feels borrowed. Every time I look at you, I wonder if tomorrow will be the day someone finally takes you down and I'll be standing there, holding the pieces. Do you know what that feels like, Brick? To live knowing your whole world can be stolen in a heartbeat." Silence fell, thick and suffocating. Brick's chest rose and fell heavily, his eyes locked on hers. For once, he had no immediate answer, no words to thunder back. Then, slowly, he reached out and cupped her face in his hand. His palm was rough, calloused from years of battles both in the streets and in the boardroom, but the way he touched her was impossibly gentle. "You won't have to hold the pieces," he said finally, his voice almost tender. "Because I won't break. Not for them. Not for anyone. And as long as I breathe, Amy, neither will you." Her breath caught, her lips parting, but before she could reply, a shrill ring cut through the silence. Brick's phone. His hand dropped from her face. He pulled the device from his pocket, his expression hardening as he read the screen. Amy's heart hammered. "Who is it?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Brick's eyes flicked to hers, dark and unreadable. "Teresa Holloway." Amy staggered back a step, her body going cold. "She's calling you." He didn't answer, just swiped the screen and lifted the phone to his ear. His voice dropped to a deadly calm. "This better be good." Amy stood frozen, every nerve alight, as she listened to one side of the conversation. Brick's face didn't change, but the tension in his body told her everything. His jaw clenched. His eyes narrowed. His free hand curled into a fist at his side. Finally, he ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. "What did she say?" Amy asked, her voice breaking. Brick's reply was like ice. "She knows where you are." The world tilted beneath Amy's feet. Amy's knees nearly buckled at Brick's words. "She knows where you are." Her mind flashed through a dozen images, masked men breaking into the estate, her children's faces twisted in terror, the crack of gunfire in the night. She clutched the edge of the vanity table for balance, her knuckles whitening. Brick didn't move. He stood there, still as a mountain, staring past her as if he could see Teresa herself standing in the room. His silence was worse than rage. "Brick," Amy's voice shook. "What does this mean? What's going to happen?" He blinked, the steel returning to his eyes. "It means the clock just started. Teresa made her move. She wants me rattled, wants you rattled. And now I have to answer." Amy's stomach knotted. "Answer how?" Brick pulled out his phone again, his fingers moving with decisive speed. Within minutes, footsteps echoed in the hall. The door opened and three of his most trusted men entered, Rocco, broad-shouldered and scarred, Malik, sharp-eyed with a quiet edge, and Dante, younger but loyal, his jaw set in determination. They bowed their heads slightly to Amy before focusing on Brick. "She knows where Amy is," Brick said flatly. "And that means she's already closer than we thought. She has eyes, ears, and probably men positioned." Rocco swore under his breath. Malik's lips pressed into a thin line. Dante's gaze flicked toward Amy, softening briefly before hardening again. "So, boss," Malik said carefully, "what's the play?" Brick looked each of them in the eye, his presence commanding the room. "We're not waiting for Teresa to come knocking on my door. We strike first. Quiet, sharp, and deep enough to send her crawling back into whatever hole she came from." Amy's chest tightened. "Strike? You mean, kill her?" Brick's gaze snapped to her. For a moment, she saw the storm raging inside him, the part of him that was man, not king. Then it was gone, shuttered behind iron walls. "I mean," he said slowly, "I will end this before it touches you." Amy's protest died in her throat. Brick turned back to his men. "Double security around the estate. No one goes in or out without my say. Dante, you'll lead the perimeter. Malik, dig into Teresa's recent moves. I want to know who's backing her, who's funding her, and what strings she's pulling. Rocco, with me, we're paying a visit to someone who owes me answers." The men nodded and dispersed without question, the weight of Brick's words propelling them like soldiers into battle. When the door shut, Amy exhaled shakily. "You're going to war, aren't you?" Brick approached her again, his shadow swallowing hers. "War came to me the second Teresa said your name. Now I decide how it ends." Her eyes glistened with tears, but she didn't look away. "And what if you don't win this time?" He leaned down, close enough that she could feel the heat of his breath against her ear. "Then I'll die making sure you live." Amy's heart twisted painfully. She wanted to tell him she didn't want his sacrifice, that she only wanted peace, but peace had abandoned them long ago. Brick pulled back, his face a mask of control, and for the first time Amy realized the depth of the burden he carried. Not just an empire, not just enemies, but her. And somewhere beyond the storm, Teresa Holloway was waiting. Hours later, long after Brick had left with Rocco, Amy sat curled on the edge of her bed, the mansion unnervingly quiet except for the patter of rain. She tried to sleep but couldn't, every creak of the floorboards made her flinch. Suddenly, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She frowned. Only a handful of people had this number, and Brick wasn't one of them. Hands trembling, she reached for it. A single message lit the screen. "Unknown number, do you really think he can protect you forever?" Amy's blood ran cold. Amy's hand trembled as she stared at the glowing screen. "Do you really think he can protect you forever?" Her chest tightened. It felt like the walls of the room were closing in, shadows stretching, suffocating. She swallowed hard, her finger hovering over the phone. For a moment, she considered throwing it across the room, pretending she never saw it. But she couldn't. Whoever had sent it knew exactly where to strike inside her mind, where fear already lived. Her thumb tapped out a reply before she could stop herself. "Amy, who is this?" The response came almost instantly. "Unknown number, a friend. Someone who knows what's coming." Her pulse pounded in her ears. "Amy, leave me alone." Another message. "Unknown number, I will. As soon as you stop letting Brick decide your fate. He's already chosen for you. He's chosen war. But war ends one of two ways, ashes or graves. Which one do you think he'll give you?" Amy's breath caught. She set the phone down on the nightstand like it was burning her. Every instinct screamed that this was Teresa. It had to be. Who else would taunt her like this, try to wedge fear between her and Brick? The door opened suddenly, and Amy nearly jumped out of her skin. Malik stood there, his tall frame backlit by the hall. His sharp eyes scanned the room before settling on her. "Everything okay, he asked, his tone low, respectful. Amy forced a shaky breath. I thought I heard something." He studied her a moment longer than necessary, as though weighing her words, before nodding. "Don't worry. We've tripled the guards tonight. Nothing's getting past us." "Thank you, Malik," she whispered. He inclined his head and shut the door softly behind him. Amy sat frozen, staring at the closed door. She wanted to call him back, to show him the messages. But something in her gut twisted. She remembered the way Malik had looked at her, too intent, too unreadable. Could she trust him? The phone buzzed again. "Unknown number. Careful, Amy. Not everyone in his house is loyal to him anymore." Her blood ran cold. Meanwhile, across town, Brick and Rocco stepped into a dimly lit warehouse. The smell of oil and metal filled the air. A lone figure waited in the center, tied to a chair beneath a swinging bulb. His face was bruised, his lips split, but his eyes still carried arrogance. Brick's jaw tightened. "Ezekiel," he growled. Rocco shoved the chair forward roughly. "We caught him at the docks, boss. Trying to slip information to Teresa's men." Brick crouched in front of him, his presence radiating lethal calm. "You've eaten at my table. Taken my money. Worn my colors. And you give Teresa Holloway the keys to my kingdom." Ezekiel spat blood at the floor near Brick's shoes. "You're finished, Brick. Everyone knows it. Teresa isn't working alone. There's more coming, bigger than you can fight. You think you own this city. You're just keeping the throne warm for someone else." Brick's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Who?" Ezekiel grinned through his blood. "You'll find out soon enough. Maybe when Amy's screaming for you to save her and you can't." Rocco swung a fist, but Brick raised a hand to stop him. Instead, he leaned in close, his voice cold and precise. If Teresa thinks she can touch Amy, she's already dead. And if there's someone else pulling her strings, I'll find them. And when I do, he gripped Ezekiel's chin, forcing him to look up. They'll wish they stayed in the shadows. Ezekiel laughed weakly, even as fear flickered in his eyes. Brick stood, towering over him. Clean this up, he told Rocco. As they walked out of the warehouse, Rocco finally asked, Boss, what if he's telling the truth? What if Teresa really isn't the top of the ladder? Brick's gaze hardened as he lit a cigar, the glow flaring in the darkness. Then we cut the ladder down. One rung at a time. But even as he said it, a thought gnawed at him. Teresa's move had been too bold, too calculated. She wasn't just striking at his empire, she was coming for Amy. And Brick swore to himself in that moment, he'd burn the entire city before he let that happen. Amy couldn't tear her eyes from the phone. The words on the screen seemed to glow brighter in the darkness, burrowing under her skin. Not everyone in his house is loyal to him anymore. Her throat was dry, her hands clammy. She sat rigid on the bed, listening to the silence pressing in from the walls. Every sound, footsteps in the hall, the groan of the old pipes, felt like a threat now. Teresa had reached her without even stepping foot in the estate. That alone was enough to make her question whether Brick's fortress of loyalty was as unshakable as he claimed. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Against her better judgment, she typed, Amy, who do you mean? The reply came in less than 10 seconds. Unknown number, think about it. Who opened your door tonight? Who looked at you too long, like he was memorizing you? Amy's stomach twisted. Malik. She gripped the phone tighter, her pulse quickening. Was Teresa planting seeds of doubt, or was there truth hidden in the venom? If Malik wasn't loyal, then Brick was more vulnerable than he realized. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number, he's already been paid. He won't protect you when the moment comes. But I will, if you trust me. Amy's breath caught. Her rational mind screamed to stop, this was exactly what Teresa wanted. But fear made her desperate, and desperation made her reckless. Amy, what do you want from me? This time, there was no immediate reply. The silence stretched until Amy began to shake. She set the phone down, forcing herself to breathe, but the dread gnawed at her. Across the city, Brick sat in the back of his armored SUV with Rocco at his side. The warehouse interrogation still burned in his mind. Ezekiel's words weren't just bluster, they carried the ring of truth, and Brick knew it. Someone bigger was playing the game. Brick's phone vibrated. It wasn't a call, but a secure alert from the estate. He opened the feed, surveillance footage from the East Wing. There, in grainy black and white, he saw Malik. The man was alone, walking the halls where Amy's quarters were located. He paused at her door, his hand hovering over the knob for several seconds before moving on. Brick's jaw tightened around the cigar clamped between his teeth. Rocco, he said, his voice dangerously calm. Yeah, boss. Get me every piece of dirt on Malik. Who he talks to, where he spends his nights, who he pays. If there's even a shadow of betrayal, I want it in my hands by morning. Rocco gave a short nod. Consider it done. Brick turned back to the screen, his gut churning. He had trusted Malik for years. The man had saved his life twice, taken bullets meant for him. But loyalty was currency, and currency could be bought. If Teresa had slipped a hand into his ranks, it would explain how she knew so much already. He exhaled smoke into the dark cabin, his eyes narrowing. If Malik's dirty, I'll bleed the truth out of him myself. Back at the estate, Amy finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, the phone clutched in her hand. She dreamed of whispers in the dark, of faceless figures closing in, of Brick's voice echoing, I won't break. But when she woke at dawn, a new message was waiting. Unknown number, you don't have to be his prisoner. Meet me tonight. Alone. If you want the truth, I'll give it to you. Amy's heart stopped.